What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Flash, Season 5, Episode 1, Nora. So, after the questions left at the end of last season, which I had to go back and remember what they were, um, not bad. Definitely not quite what I was expecting. I was really hoping it was going to be something along the lines of what they end up doing, which is something happened to Barry, and I thought Nora might be coming back to help stop that, which she did say at the end she's going to help, or she's going to try to help keep him from disappearing. Um, but she is playing it off like, no, I just came to spend some time with you. But Barry knows, of course, the truth that he does disappear. And I think because of that, I think he's also scared and wants to keep her around to see if she can help him figure out why he disappeared to begin with. Because I think it's very similar to how like season 1 was, where Thawne came in and basically wanted to keep that happening. But now this time it's like, I guess he disappeared and then came back later, but now it's like he disappeared and never comes back. So that's kind of interesting. As far as Nora herself, we've already seen some scenes with her interacting with some of the team before we knew who she was. Yeah, she's okay. Definitely want to take some points off, though, first of all, for ripping off Into the Spider-Verse. Freeze. Let's back up a bit. Where have I heard that before? Let's do this one more time. Okay. We get it. You saw Into the Spider-Verse. We all did. We know you're ripping it off. Come on, The Flash. You're better than that. Also, I don't know. Some of the cringy scenes, mainly with her and Iris at one point. It was very cringy. It felt like, mother-daughter trying to connect, and they're just not. And she's like, oh yeah, that shows shui. I'm like, oh god, is that the new thing everybody's going to be saying in the future, shui? And Iris does the mom thing. She's like, oh yeah, I know what shui is. I'm shui. We're shui. I'm like, okay, that makes sense whenever it's like a mother who is in her late 30s, early 40s, and she's trying to sound cool and hip. This is a woman who's in her probably late 20s, maybe mid 20s, probably mid 20s, talking to her daughter from the future. I don't know. It didn't seem right. Like, I've seen this done before, but this setup didn't exactly work. But that scene was the worst, for sure, by far. The rest of it was okay. It wasn't really that gripping. I'm curious to find out what happened with the Flash, why he disappeared, but also I feel like they're getting very, what's the word? Very random with their deciding to play with the timeline. In some points, oh, this is very important. We can't mess up the timeline, and then all of a sudden this happens. You can change certain points in time, and it's okay. So, I don't know. It feels like they're being a little too lax with how they're messing with the timeline, and it does feel like something that Barry should be. No. We need to make sure we don't change anything big. Because, like I said, I'm sure he's scared why he disappeared, but that also does seem like a fixed point in time that you shouldn't be messing with. But I'm sure they're going to try to mess with it somehow. Don't know what's going to happen, don't know what's going to come of it, but that's what it seems like is going to happen. But yeah, those are my main complaints. As far as the things that really worked in this one, first of all, Dibney. Surprised that I'm saying that, but yeah, he works in this episode. It was very fun and funny to see him catching up on the stuff that the team already knew. Like, I don't know, just some of his reactions were perfect. He comes in with the word, all right, guys, I know you had some time ahead of me, but I got this. Starts rolling in. All right, so if she created this timeline, that means these other worlds, they must exist in the same time. It could be like a mini-verse. Or everybody's just like, we know, it's the multiverse. He just starts banging his head on the thing. He's like, oh my god, you guys need to make a pamphlet. He was really funny. Also, Cisco's reactions to some of the names. Just, like, both of them bring comedy in moments when you just least expect it. Like, first, whenever Nora's like, yeah, my name's Excess, and Cisco's off at the side, I didn't come up with that name. And then later on, when he's talking about gridlock, he just made fun of the name earlier. He's like, man, I'd hate to be stuck in that gridlock. Gridlock! Oh god. He just realizes that he's the one that came up with the name. I don't know, just some of the comedy really, really worked in this episode. And I'll admit, the scenes near the end, I started to feel. At first I wasn't on board. About halfway through the episode, I wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't really connecting with it. But somewhere, I'd say around the time whenever probably the plane started to happen, I started to feel it. You know, whenever they all phase together and phase the plane through the buildings. First of all, him having to call back on what Thawne told him in the very first season on when he told him how to phase through things. That was kind of interesting because it's like you're having to remember what your enemy told you to help you, and now he's having to give that to his daughter, and so he's teaching her how to phase, which was a nice moment. And on top of that, afterwards she's like, it was my first time phasing, and he was just talking about, you know, missing all of her firsts, and it's like he got to be there for that one. So I thought that was a touching moment. It made me get a little watery. I was like, oh, that's sweet. And then just all the stuff at the end, you know, like Barry finally coming to grips with like, all right, let's keep her around for now. I was feeling it. I'm curious to see who this new villain is. He seems, I don't know if he hates metas, because he, you know, stops the caravan taking this guy, this gridlock, to prison, and basically says, I'm going to kill you all. I assume by all he means all metahumans, but he also seems to be a metahuman, possibly. Maybe not. But whatever the case, I'm curious to see what his story is. But overall, I mean, it's a good setup for this season. I hope that they don't play too much on the cringe humor with like Nora and Iris, because it's very clear Nora and Barry are like one and the same. But also she does have some moments of Iris in her too. You know, Barry talks about how fearless she was and like it reminded me of you. But it just seems like they're setting up for a lot of moments where Iris is going to be like, yeah, but you and her just connect so much better than she and I do, and I want to be there for a good mom, and blah 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 blah. I don't want there to be a lot of moments like that, and more moments of her being like, oh yeah, that's Shui, I'm Shui, we're all Shui. I don't need that, and that stuff is going to be what makes me dislike this story. So I hope they can keep all of that out of this. I'm not very hopeful, just because it is the CW and that feels like something they would do. But we'll see what happens. But I'm curious to see what's going to happen next. So that's it for this episode. On to the next one. See you guys there. Now episode 2, Blocked. So, as far as the 3 different storylines that are going on right now, or well, I guess technically 4. You've got Barry, Iris, and Nora, their whole story. You've got Jo, Celine, and her, you know, powers. You've got Caitlin trying to figure out about her dad, and then you've got the main story with this new guy. Apparently his name's Cicada, as we found out at the end of this episode. I mean, they're all decent. I'd say the storyline with Celine is probably my least favorite, because it just, first of all, we never really figured out why she got the powers in the first place. And she finds out that they're waning, apparently. And it just doesn't really add much. Like, she has a moment in this episode where she wants to try to put these mental inhibitors or whatever on the baby, so that way she can continue to read the baby's mind even though her powers are fading, because she wants to be able to understand what her baby wants. And it's like, okay, like, that's not necessarily, like, every parent I'm sure can understand that feeling, but nobody has ever gone from, oh yeah, I know exactly what they want, to not being able to. So it's not really a relatable problem to, like, it's a relatable problem to say, hey, I want to know what my baby's doing. It's not a relatable problem to say, hey, I know what my baby wants, and now I'm losing that ability, and I want to keep it. Nobody has that. So that, I don't know, it's kind of just thrown in there. Like I said, we still never found out why in the first place, and she still has the powers. I thought maybe it had something to do with the baby. I guess not. I don't know. But anyways, so there's that. Not that interesting. The storyline with Caitlin's father, and this one, I'll admit, so far this season, these first 2 episodes, there are storylines that are starting off, and I've got no interest. Everything with Cisco and Gypsy. I mean, I like them together, cute couple, but for the most part, this storyline's not interesting to me. It's not really capturing my attention. However, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just gets good. Like, don't get me wrong, there were definitely some funny moments. The Han shot second, that doesn't even make any sense. Fantastic. Whenever he's about to cut his hair and he's like, you cut the hair, I cut you. Also fantastic. There's some funny moments with Dibney and Cisco. But it really, like, I was just sitting there, I'm just like, okay, can we get back to the other stuff, please? Can we go back to and then all of a sudden they're in the cafe or the coffee shop. I've totally forgotten what the name of what it is. Jitters. They're in Jitters, And all of a sudden it just turns into like this really nice moment where Cisco pulls out, Ralph's whole list, and he's talking about number 27. If she doesn't, she's not the love of your life, because if she was, she would want to be a part of your life, or she would still be a part of it. And he just kind of has this moment of like clarity, but also something to help Caitlin out. It's like, look, Gypsy, she's not the love of my life. I know that now. And then he's like, but you still have a chance for your father to be a part of your life. And even if he doesn't want to be, don't you want to know, rather than just wondering about the rest? It was a really good scene. It was really emotional. I'm like, man, I was not invested before, but now all of a sudden I am. And ultimately she sees something about her mother. I don't know what's going on with that. We'll probably find out later. As far as the stuff with Nora, again, beginning of the episode, I'm sitting there, I'm frustrated with Nora. I'm like, why won't she just learn? Why is she going constantly against what Barry's trying to tell her? And why isn't Barry being a bit more like, hey, we need you to stay on task because you could get seriously hurt. I could get seriously hurt. Like, you don't want that, so listen to what I have to say. But then it turns into a really nice moment between Joe and Barry whenever Joe's talking about his fourth grade science project, and he comes to the realization that how he felt then is how he feels, or how Nora is feeling now. And I'm like, that's really well done. And then also the funny scene after where you see Celine heard that whole conversation, and just it makes her feel nice, and so she comes up, starts kissing Joe, and Joe's like, like, you just tell it's like, I wasn't expecting this, but I'm okay with it. I don't know, just made me laugh. Anyways, but yeah, so then that was a really nice moment, and just came out of nowhere. I'm like, I like that. But then, of course, near the end, they go face this girl that can apparently create these blocks. Which, block? Like, I figured, okay, Cisco's not in the best of mood, so he's not on top of his naming game right now. But I figured near the end of the episode, whenever Cisco kind of started to get a little bit of his groove back, he'd look at that and be like, block? What was I thinking? No, we're going to come up with something better. Anyways. But yeah, so they go and they stop all these guys that are trying to shoot at her, and then she traps Barry. And so I'm just like, okay, so Nora, go pick up the handcuffs, put her in there. She's just standing. She's like, oh no. Like, do something about it. She's got the flash. Do something about it. And then finally you can see, like, she's closing Barry in, and she's, like, breathing heavily. She's like, oh yeah, she gets tired. And then she starts running around and like, hey, try to get me. And so she's shooting at her. I'm just like, or you could just take the handcuffs and put them on top of her? Or put them on their... Why? Why are you waiting so long to do anything? And then why is this your first option, is just to run around until she gets tired enough to where you could put that... I don't know. It just seemed a little bit weird. It seems like it took her too long to figure that out. But what's curious to me, and this is why, that scene was kind of frustrating, but then I kind of forgot about it shortly after, because all of a sudden the cicada shows up. And you can see, first of all, he stabs Block. But then, we see how his powers, I don't know if it's his powers or if what he has, that's just something he has. But his thing, the little, it looks like a lightning rod almost, but it sticks it in the ground, and that sucks away all of their abilities. I was curious to see if that's what does it, like if it just takes away their abilities and keeps a hold of them, but it seems more like it negates their powers whenever it's stuck in the ground, and it's not until they get away from it that they get their powers back. I wasn't sure if they were just going to be gone until they managed to, like, break the thing or something along those lines, but whatever the case, we see he's clearly a very good fighter. Like, we saw a little scene with him, I think it was at the beginning of this episode. We saw a scene with him, like, in a gym or something. I guess he might be a fighter of sorts, like a wrestling type of thing. But yeah, I'm curious to find out what's going on there, because we see Nora shows up and is like, Dad! And then this guy just sort of stops, and he was about to stab Barry. And I'm just like, okay, why? Like, what is that? Is it because he's got daddy issues? Or is there something else going on here with Nora specifically that we just don't know about? Because, I mean, how much of this is true to the timeline? Because clearly Nora would not have been there normally, and if he was always there, then clearly Barry would be dead by now. So what changed to lead us to this moment? Because I'm always going to be thinking that. I'm always going to be thinking about, okay, so what changed when Nora changed things? Because clearly we already saw, I mean, Gridlock was somebody that I don't think he died in Nora's timeline, because she was surprised by it whenever she found out he died. So what caused that? What caused this guy to all of a sudden want to start killing these metahumans? And like clearly she knows who he is. I don't know. I'm curious. It's got me intrigued. I will say that. It's just there are certain moments that I wish would kind of be a little bit more pushed to the side or maybe have a little bit more relevance to the story. Um, but I mean, so far it's good. It's just it has too many down points. At least for the Flash, as far as I'm concerned, it's still miles and miles ahead of Supergirl or Arrow. It's just it's not quite to the same standard that I normally hold the Flash to, and I felt the same way about last season too. So it kind of feels like it just sort of taken steps down these past 2 seasons, but we'll see where it's headed. I'm excited. So, anyways, on to the next episode. See you there. And now episode 3, The Death of Vibe. So again, I feel like I'm gonna have to do this with all the CWDC shows, is just break it down story by story, because most of them tend to do this, right? Where they have the main story, they have the story for the episode, they have a couple side stories. So first of all, we'll talk about the Dibney stuff. Not that interesting. Just him dealing with feeling like a fool, and then they bring in this new Harrison Wells, who's basically a detective, and it makes him feel inferior. I'm just like, okay, like whatever. Dibney is not at his best whenever he's trying to do emotional moments. He's at his best whenever he's doing comedy, and not the goofy, elongated man comedy. I'm talking about just the quick one-liners. That is the actor, the writing for Dibney. The best is whenever they're doing one-liners for him. Everything else is just kind of or it's not good. As far as Caitlyn's stuff is concerned, though, it kind of ties in with it because he goes and helps her, trying to be helpful after what happened. I'm curious. I don't know what it's going to mean because, again, we're not really sure about her powers, why she had them before the reactor went off. But I'm curious to find out what all of the stuff with her dad means. And, her mom has shown she can be a nice person, but also she's kind of mysterious in some of what she does too. So I'm wondering how much of a hand that she had in it and how much of it was just her father's doing. But yeah, I'm intrigued where they're gonna go with Caitlyn's storyline because they've set it up enough to where, yeah, it's good. It's exciting and it's got a lot of mystery and intrigue to it. So I like that setup. I just hope that the Dibney stuff doesn't keep tainting it, because honestly that was where it got a little bit dragged down, is whenever they had to pause and talk about Dibney's problems. I don't mind Dibney helping her because it is kind of a fun little team up that they have going on, but I think whenever they try to like bond, that's where it struggles. Like I don't mind the fact that they're friends now. They've worked through some stuff, they've worked together quite a bit. I don't mind them being friends and just working together on this stuff and just figuring out more. You don't need to take time to have these emotional moments. Like, we get it. It's going to be emotional for Caitlyn. You can spend time, if you want to do anything emotional, spend time on it with her father and all the emotions that brings up, not Dibney and him trying to prove himself. And then as far as everything else, I mean, pretty much all the other stuff was focused on Cicada. And they're doing a good job of setting him up. I talked about with Arrow last season, Ricardo Diaz, they really set him up as this big bad guy. But basically all we had to go on was just some of what he did. The fact that he had so many people working for him. And, he was a decent fighter, but nothing special. Nothing like some of the stuff we'd seen in the show before. But honestly, the main thing was just, he's just this big bad guy and he has control of the police force and he has people on his payroll. Yeah, but how did that all happen? Why did it all happen? Like, it just sort of happened with no good explanation. With Cicada, it feels like not only is he shown to be pretty intimidating and good at what he does, but also they're slowly revealing his backstory as it goes along. And I talked about how Nora, she ran up and said dad. I was wondering, could it be that it was more the dad part, not necessarily the fact that Nora showed up? Sure enough, he was talking to Joe and started talking about, like, I hate to hurt a family man. So yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like his story is going to be. From what I've seen, if I had to take a guess, it looks like his daughter was probably caught up in something that happened that involved the metahumans. And so he decided to take on this, this journey of killing all of the metahumans because they're the ones that killed his daughter. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with him because they've done a good job of building him up as a villain so far. Like, he's not necessarily the most difficult villain they've ever faced, I feel like there's an easy fix to a lot of the problems, you know. But they say that he never got caught, so maybe it's not as easy as I'm thinking. But it looks like he's gonna be easier than some of the other villains they face. But I don't know. We'll see. Um, but as far as some of the other aspects going on the outside, just the little things. First of all, the new Harrison Wells. I wasn't sure how I felt about him at first. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's just because I could not tell what he was trying to do with his voice. Like, don't get me wrong, the guy playing Tom Cavanaugh or Tom Cavanagh, I don't know how to say his last name. The guy that plays these different Harrison Wells, he's funny, and it's funny that he can play so many different types of characters. But it's like at first he didn't know what voice to choose, because at first I'm like, okay, is he doing British? No, he sounds American. No, he sounds Irish. Okay, now he's back to British. Okay, maybe a little Italian. No, French. No, British. Like, I could not tell. And then finally he said, I'm French. And from then on, like, the French accent was, pretty steady. But, like, everything before that point, I'm just like, what accent are you trying to do here? But as it went along, like, it got better. Because at first he seemed like just a charlatan, because apparently he solved the case of who Cicada is on so many different Earths. But then he finds out that apparently because of time variance, this cicada is going to be different. And so you kind of see it almost kind of gets him a little riled up. Like, okay, now this is a new case I can solve around the same character, different variables. This could be fun. But he's very clearly very smart. His name is Harrison Sherlock Holmes. Or not Holmes, Wells. Um, which, one of the best lines. It was so subtle but so perfect. When Dibney comes in and Caitlin is explaining, she's like, yeah, so this is Harrison Sherlock. He's like, look. And it just without even missing a beat, she keeps going, but he throws at it and he's just, look. Perfect delivery. It was the perfect, just some of the comedy in the show goes so well. But yeah, I like his character, and I like the scene between him and Nora at the end, because you could see Nora clearly got this idea to punch the satellite, which appears to be what set this all in motion. Like, he seems to already figured that out. So she did that. That set this whole thing in motion. And he's like, you didn't happen to get this idea from somebody else, right? Like, you came up with this idea, how? And then before she could say anything, he's like, oh, by yourself, of course, because he doesn't want to make her think he's onto her. But clearly she can tell something's not right. And his look after her tells you he knows there's something else going on here. So now I'm curious who gave Nora the idea to punch the satellite with the Flash, and what did that change, if anything? Because at first I thought she had done it hoping, oh, okay, maybe this will save his life, maybe this will fix whatever happens, and then it made it seem like, oh no, I wanted to help, I wanted to be there, to be a part of things for once, but now they're making it seem like somebody put that suggestion in her mind, and that gets me excited to see, okay, so somebody clearly wanted this whole thing with Cicada to happen early. Who could it be, and what could they gain from this? We see somebody watching Caitlin, but is that her dad, or is that whoever kind of planted the idea in Nora's head? A lot of questions, a lot of good mysteries they're building up so far. The question is, can they carry through on most of them? We'll see. Most of the time, the Flash doesn't disappoint when they're building up some mysterious stuff. But so far, I really do like the build-up. I like how they handled Cisco's death, or Vibe's death. Like, very, very clever thinking from Nora. Because at first, early on in the episode, I was definitely getting pissed, because again, she was doing her own thing. She was running headlong into situations without any thought. When she ran into the barn and set off, like, not just, first she ran into the barn, and then, they're talking about, oh, there's the sensor or the booby trap. She just runs over to Santos and says, I got it. And he's like, all right, so that booby trap is going to be a decoy. I'm like, see, if you would just wait a few seconds instead of doing things without asking, stuff like this wouldn't happen. And then throughout the entire episode, she's talking about, oh yeah, he's definitely the one. He's definitely Cicada. Detective Wells said it. I don't know. I just wasn't really feeling it. They did explain it with her talking about, like, the guilty feeling, and I get that. But it's still kind of like, you're being dumb. And she's not like a teenager either. At least she shouldn't be. Because they said in the newspaper that the Flash goes missing for 25 years, which I assumed is from her time. Like, she came back 25 years, he was missing, which means she should be at least 25, right? I'm guessing, I would think. I don't know. They never really clarified her age, but she's definitely not a teenager, which makes me think she should be smart enough to make rational decisions. And there's too many times where she's not just making dumb decisions, she's compounding them with even dumber decisions. But then they fix that. And that's kind of what made me get on board with this story is Barry talks to her and it's just like, look, sometimes you just have to take a second and think before you act. And so she does have that moment there at the end where everything's happening. Cicada, he's already been chasing Cisco through the forest, and then Barry gets there and he's getting beaten up. And so she just takes a second to pause time and just think. And she comes up with a plan, goes for it. They manage to fake Cisco's death to get, Cicada off his back. And it's very well done, in my opinion. It's a moment for her to redeem the stupidity that they had earlier in the episode. And I think that's done on purpose. I think that's just good writing. So, yeah, overall, I mean, these 3 episodes were very solid. I'm really excited to see where this season is taking us. Cicada's a good villain that they've built up so far. I'm excited to see more about the mysteries that they're building up with Caitlin's father, with whoever's helping Nora. Hopefully some more stories with this Sherlock Wells. I think he's a pretty interesting character so far, that he seems to catch on to things really quick, and I like his style too, because it's a little bit different than most of the other Wells that we've dealt with in the past. So yeah, overall very happy with the start of the season so far. Now on to Arrow. Well, let me know what you guys think, though, down in the comment section below. We talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Flash reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.